Well, good morning, Northlake. Hope you're doing well. And just want to focus our heart talk this morning on Galatians chapter 5. In Galatians chapter 5, verse 13 through 18, so I guess this would be part 2. Paul, in verse 13, reminds us to not let our freedom in Christ become an opportunity to sin. An opportunity to sin. And then he answers, so how does that work? How do we not let our freedom in Christ become an opportunity to sin? He tells us the answer to this in verse 16. He says, walk by the Spirit. So there's a difference between walking in the law and walking in the Spirit. So he says, walk by the Spirit. Verse 18, he says, be led by the Spirit. This is the idea, if you remember earlier in the book of Galatians that we've already studied, that we had a guardian, and that was the law, the tutor. The law was our tutor. The law was our guardian. But now he's telling us in the same way that now the Spirit is our guardian. The Spirit is our tutor. And so he is telling us, how do we overcome sin in our life? How do we not live by the flesh? He says, be controlled by the Spirit. Let the inner compulsion of the Spirit of God that lives in you as a Christ follower now lead you. Let it lead you. In fact, in verse 17, he tells us that the Spirit is always at odds or always at war with the flesh. And that is true. We feel that every day, don't we? We desire to live according to the Spirit in the way that God would want us to live, desires us to live, to glorify Christ, but yet we also have the battle of the flesh. Paul writes about this in Romans 7. And this is a battle that we always have. Am I going to let my life be controlled by the Spirit, or am I going to let my life be controlled by the flesh? Now, the good news of this is that this fight is not forever. I mean, this fight between the Spirit and the flesh is not forever. It's temporary. It's while we are here. And Paul is just encouraging us to yield to the Spirit. The Spirit that brings freedom in Christ. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. That same Spirit is now our guardian to lead us into being Christ formed in us and to lead us in a life that Christ desires us to live. And so we rely upon the strength of the Spirit of God. And by the way, it's a powerful Spirit. This is the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead. It lives in us. It lives in us. It overcame death in the cross, and we can overcome sins in our life when we submit ourselves and be led by the Spirit. Miss you guys. Can't wait to see you soon.